Hi, guys. I've been asked what my take is on the Clinton scandal and impeachment of the 90s. Um, and I guess there's a number of points I could make about that. The basic story, if you're too young to remember, is that we had a government shutdown when Democrats and Republicans couldn't agree on a budget. So the government shut down. Most paid employees went home. And at that point in time, President Clinton started a relationship with, I think, a then 22 or 23-year-old intern. Interns aren't paid, so the interns didn't go home. They stayed at their jobs in the White House. And that relationship apparently lasted for about 2 years. Um, uh, and at some point, the young woman, the intern, Monica Lewinsky, told a friend at work, or a friend she knew from work, Linda Tripp, that she had this, relationship, this boyfriend who happened to be the president of the United States. And Linda Tripp leaked that information, and it finds its way ultimately to Ken Starr, who was a prosecutor, a special prosecutor, who had been appointed by the Republican controlled Congress, who was already looking into um, other potential scandalous things related to the Clintons. You have to keep in mind that this was a very partisan period in politics, kind of like today, where um, people in opposing parties are basically looking to embarrass, to undermine, to politically damage their opponents. And so Ken Starr had been looking into the Whitewater investigation, which involved a real estate deal in Arkansas that the Clintons had invested in. And they were trying to prove basically that there had been some kind of misconduct or illegal activity there. That really never led anywhere. But the Monica Lewinsky rumor looked like it was more profitable to investigate. Ultimately, um, the president is accused of this relationship, and he denied it for months and uh, um, tried to use executive privilege, anything he could to kind of stall the investigation, but ultimately was forced to admit that he had had an inappropriate relationship with this young woman. Um, Congress, again, in the House controlled by the Republicans, voted um, uh, two charges for impeachment. Obstruction of justice was one of them, um, and I think perjury was the other. And ultimately, Clinton was not convicted by the Senate, and he remained in office. And so this was a sort of a huge soap opera that went on for, it seemed like, forever. So the question of what I think about it, do I think that what Clinton did, lying about an embarrassing relationship that would damage his reputation personally, is that high crimes and misdemeanors? I think I kind of come down with the United States Senate on that, but probably not. Do I think that a 50-something-year-old man having a relationship with a 20-something-year-old woman is kind of, you know, distasteful? The yuck factor? Yeah, I think that too. Um, but what's the importance of the Clinton scandal and impeachment? I think that it was something that the whole story does not lend credit to the office of the presidency. So we would like our presidents to behave, with more ethics and more dignity than that. You have to remember though that many modern presidents have engaged in infidelity, which, as I guess the descendants or the heirs of the Puritans, Americans, I think are much more upset about than, say, the French or many other peoples around the world. But if you go back in time, Warren G. Harding, Franklin Roosevelt had an affair. Uh, John F. Kennedy is sort of the major example of a womanizer, but many presidents have misbehaved in that way, and so I don't think it's the behavior necessarily that should be the focus. I think it's the distraction that the scandal had that it diverted people's attention. It took all the oxygen out of the room. So, in other words, other issues that should have been attended to probably weren't. And by the 90s, we had cable TV and CNN, and it was a 24-hour news cycle, and that just sort of, the environment really fed on that kind of scandalous stuff. And so, in the same period, though, other things are going on. And for example, a little known terrorist organization called Al Qaeda launched an attack on the World Trade Center, not the one that destroyed it in 2001, the earlier attack in which a truck bomb was driven into the parking garage, exploded, and took out like 3 or 4 floors inside the building, had to be repaired. That's a warning sign of the coming war on terror and 9/11 in that period. But it's kind of just a blip on the radar screen. And that's because this scandal was occupying all the attention of the news media and many of the American people. So the other thing is that it was not just a kind of a diversion, a waste of time, a waste of money, taxpayers' money, doing all of the, it would have cost millions of dollars to go through that entire process. But it increases the bitterness and partisanship, and probably doesn't serve the interest of the American people. And so, maybe President Clinton could have been focused on being president more rather than meeting his lawyers and trying to defend himself. So that's my take on that one. And you can probably go online and find differing opinions, but this was a major event of the 90s, and I think it increases the distrust that many people have toward government, which was an ongoing trend since before Watergate. And again, for the sake of democracy, probably you don't want to have so many Americans tuning out or convinced that our government is not worth investing in. So hope you had a great week. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you folks later.